Been a while. Hopefully no one's worried about me. Although if I'm honest, it would be reassuring to have someone, anyone, who cares. I stopped drinking. After seeing her face, those sweet, trusting eyes staring at me from the back of the milk carton, the rest of the night took on a distinct, surreal nature. I drove home. Probably shouldn't have. Laying in bed, my head spinning, inchoate thoughts briefly surfacing like some ancient deep-sea creature, barely visible in the starlight. Its spout a noxious miasma before submerging into the inky depths, slipping out of my grasp. So I got up. I cleaned. I resolved to eat healthy, even exercise. Count sanity among those things we don't know how to value until their absence gives us that clarity. 33 years. I thought the morning light streaming through my window would have solidified things, brought me back to normal. Instead, the stark daylight slipped me further to some edge deep within my consciousness. Magiro disappeared 33 years ago. What does that mean? Then a thought hit me, that she'd be 41 right now. How is that even possible? I resolved to ask Lenore about her. Even thought my debts were paid, even though I had cash in my bank account. This wasn't about money anymore. I needed to know. Not wanted, needed. The desk, which Lenore, that's her name, right? It doesn't quite sound right in my head when I say it. Sat at was empty. I looked around, but there was no one there. Everything was amplified. Footsteps echoed on the walls, from the high ceiling with the chandeliers, the hissing of the door, and the mechanical click of the lock. Once inside, the inverse effect happened. The sound of my shoes dull, empty, absorbed. The pressure in my ears more intense. I tried to pop my ears, equalize, but I couldn't. Inside the classroom, the lights were dimmed. Looking around, I couldn't locate a light switch, so I sat in the weak light. When it hit 9 o'clock, the bell didn't ring. The children didn't come in. Something was wrong. I stuck my head through the door separating this world from the nurse's world, the door the kids enter every day. A long hallway, somewhere in the depths, the sound of water drops falling echoed. Drip, drip. There was a faint, musty odor mold, perhaps. 50 yards away, a sliver of mottled light escaped from a doorway. The door widened, and the nurse exited with her strange waddle. She looked in my direction. Startled, I quickly ducked back in the doorway. Surely she must have seen me. Moments stretched into eternity as I waited to hear her irregular footsteps shuffling my way. But they turned and faded into the depths of the hall. I poked my head once more. Empty. Silent except that slow, maddening drip. I took one hesitant step into the hallway, then another. Breaking the boundary felt like it should have been a bigger deal, but it was strangely anticlimactic. No pressure change in my eardrums. Creeping along, my heart beat in my chest. Panic crept up, threatening to take me over. Drawing close to the door, I could hear muffled voices. I leaned into the crack and saw 2 men with clipboards walking my way. Surely this is the end of me, I thought. Surely I'd be caught. A mouse in a cage. Frantically, I looked around and saw a small alcove, a bit wider than a closet, but deep and dark. I ducked in and held my body flush against the wall, heart pounding. Surely they'd hear that. My telltale heart would betray me. The doctors walked by. "We're at about 80% capacity," the one with the clipboard remarked. "We'll need to speed it up to make the timeline," the other remarked. This one wore an ornamental tie. Snoopy playing a saxophone. Musical notes danced up the edges in celebration. They were right beside me now. Surely they'd glance left and see me in full view, pressed against the wall. Speeding it up comes with increased risk, clipboard guy replied as they passed me, out of view. I became aware I was holding my breath and released it. As my breath escaped, a strange rustling, like thousands of leaves, filled the air. I looked deeper in the alcove. My eyes adjusted to the darkness. They could make out a shape against the wall, about 4 feet from where I stood. Just go, I told myself. Then it moved, moaned. I took a step further. The shape was the size of a human, covered in something amorphous. Leaning in closer, the dank smell intensified. The rustling again. The shape shimmered in the dark, like the scales of a fish in the deep. An eye blinked open from within, wide open, filled with fright. Just then, something brushed against my left leg. I looked down. A vine had curled around my calf and was winding up my thigh. I put my hand against the wall to push away, and another vine encircled my arm. They tightened, pulling me against the wall. Another one wrapped around my right leg, pulling me tight to the wall. I realized this other person had been taken by these vines. My struggles just drew me tighter, a fly caught in some macabre spider web. One vine circled my head, and I could feel it begin to penetrate my skin with a dull ache, like a mosquito. The tendrils reached around my skull, seeking, digging in, completely and utterly stuck. Then suddenly, I felt an overwhelming presence, something in my consciousness, where we're usually completely alone. I could feel it searching, probing the edges of my mind, cold, calculating, almost reptilian in nature. I steeled myself for the end. I don't know how. Long I was there, in that presence. Then, suddenly, the vines loosened, retreated. I pulled away from them with no resistance and fell to the ground. In front of me, glinting in the light, was a small rectangle. I grabbed it and put it in my pocket, then stood and sprinted down the hallway. All pretense gone. Through the room, up the stairs, and into my car. I looked at my phone. It had died, run out of batteries. When I got home, I showered, letting the hot steam run over me, then plugged in my phone. After a few minutes, it blinked on. The display read, Saturday. Had I really gone in on a weekend? Is my mind that far gone? Then I remembered the name tag. I fished it out of my pocket. Mrs. Wambach. Somehow I knew that was the teacher that was here before me. Maybe she noticed what was going on, decided to investigate. That frightened me. But there was something much, much darker. The presence behind the vines. I could feel the way it felt in my head. Alien, repulsive, invading, probing. I thought of Mrs. Wambach, stuck there for God knows how long, in the stasis of that thing's embrace. The fear in that eye. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part was that it was somehow familiar. I recognized it. That feeling, that consciousness probing me. It's something I've felt before. Somewhere. But that doesn't make any sense, right?